We are awakening together. This is our weekly gathering we hold online. For more information, visit our website, awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you there.
Good morning, all. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad to be here. And it's nice to see all your beautiful faces. And I'm going to read our statement of purpose. We are an assembly of equals, joined in common purpose, awakening to one true self within an appearance of many faiths, many cultures, and many symbols. We seek to discern one true and one truth and to rest in its embrace. We seek to discern one truth and to rest in its embrace. So Awakening Together has 5 core values that it operates under. And today I'm going to talk about core value number 3. We accept one true self, which is one presence or being, non-dual, without beginning or end, and absolutely changeless. We live this value by practicing letting go of the belief in the individual self as who we are. Okay, so now it's time for George to play my first song. And the song is Higher Love by Steve Winwood. Anyway, go ahead, George. All right. I just want to say a short prayer in gratitude for this community that's always here when we need it. And we can come here and share. We can share everything, our sorrows, our joys, and join together. Thank you. So Sharon Slyter is going to read for me. She's going to read from NTI. She's going to read from NTI Luke. And she's also going to read from Revelation. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. I can be heard? Yeah. Okay, as the story plays itself out, it seems to become more confusing and more complicated, and one forgets that the story is only thought within the mind, pure illusion without reality of any kind. As one makes judgments, the story becomes more meaningful. It seems to take on life, and the story continues and is reapplied as meaning similar thoughts come together in the mind. And yet the story was never anything but thought, without power to affect apart from the mind of the thinker. So what does this story say to you? All perception is thought within the mind of the thinker. The thought has no meaning of itself, but it is given meaning by the thinker. If the thought seems to have effects, it is the thinker that gives that thought any effects it seems to have. In other words, there is no power outside of the power of the mind. This is a fact that I would have you consider now. Remember all that I have been teaching you as you consider the impact of what I am telling you now. Everything you experience through the filter of your mind. You are never focused on the world. You are always focused on thought. The basis of all of your experience until now has been the belief in the law of separateness. The Spirit of God is one, and everything that exists within the Spirit of God. The truth is always true. And now, what does this story mean except that it can have no meaning? And if that is true of this story, can that which you experience have any meaning apart from the meaning that you give it? Everything you experience through the filter of your mind. You believe in the law of separateness, but the Spirit of God is one. You have given your willingness that you may be healed. Whenever you think you are focused in the world, you are focused on thought. Judgment makes thought seem real and gives meaning to thought. There is no power outside the mind, power of the mind. Now let's talk about forgiveness. Based on the law of separateness, you may forgive other persons for what they have done to offend or hurt you. You may also choose not to forgive them and hold on to a grievance. In order to do this, you must have made a judgment that separates you from your brother. Based on God's law, the Spirit of God is one. There is no separate one that can offend or hurt you. There is only a collection of thoughts which you hold within your mind. Of themselves, the thoughts have no meaning, but based on past learning, learned through judgment, the thoughts seem to have meaning. And so you feel offended or hurt based on what you think you know. Can you see how your brother has done nothing? Can you see how all meaning that has seemed to result in hurt has come from the filter of your mind? And can you also see how all meaning that seems to be applied is applied because you believe that the meaning applied is real? Yet this does not mean that the meaning is real or meaningful in any way. It only means that you believe it is, and so you react as if it is. In this way, you continue to learn the meaning that you apply to your thoughts. So what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is simply an acknowledgement of the truth of how the offense or hurt has come about. It has not come from your brother. It has come from the meaning you've applied to thoughts within your mind. Without this meaning, you could not be hurt. And then forgiveness is taking this realization one step further by acknowledging you do not want to hurt anyone. You acknowledge that the meaning that has hurt you is within your mind. You are the owner or believer in that meaning. And so you are also the one that can let go of any meaning you have applied. And when the meaning is let go, the offense or hurt must disappear also. For there is no longer power to influence an effect. What was made has been undone. This is the process of forgiveness. I realize that it will sometimes seem to take great faith to see your thoughts as meaningless. For you have taught yourself that your thoughts have great meaning. In fact, you believe that your thoughts have purpose. And that purpose is to define and make sense of your world and to define and protect you. This is hidden meaning you have given it. And this is why you must lay your thoughts aside. For if you have made sense and meaning out of purely meaningless, you are living within a world of illusion and believing it. In order to discover what is true, you must lay illusions aside. For you cannot find truth by looking through a filter of illusion. This will seem to take faith at times, but faith is nothing more than an expression of willingness. Call on your willingness and remember it is your strength. Revelation 16. It is time to be quiet and still the mind. Within the stillness, there is this rustling, but what you hear and feel is the rustling of illusion. Still the mind in faith that the rustling is illusion. Let the rustling rustle, but hold only to the thoughts of stillness. Be still. In this way, you do acknowledge illusion. In this way, you do not acknowledge it is true. In this way, you do nothing. And nothing is the acknowledgement that nothing is due. Let peace rule the mind as all that is not true moves on through. God is love. In silence, let this love be known. Heaven is all that is, and all that is realized through the passing of what is not. Nothing is happening in the mind when anything but love is perceived. Be willing to loosen the hold on nothing by trusting the stillness, which nothing is not. Trust within the stillness. Your true peace is known here. Trust within the stillness until the images of the mind have been transformed. Over to you, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you for reading. I tried not to include the entire book. Everything I looked at, I had a hard time choosing what to read because it all relates to the same thing. So it's a beautiful text. Thank you, Regina. And thank you, Sharon, for reading. So my share for today, I knew I wanted to talk about my experience of healing I had this summer, but I wasn't clear how I would share it. A thought came to my mind from A Course in Miracles. An ancient hatred has become a present love. Later that day, I received the Holy Encounter in the mail, which is a publication put out by the Miracle Distribution Center. And on the front page was an article by Beverly Hutchinson McNabb. The holiest of all spots on earth is where the ancient hatred has become a present love. From A Course in Miracles, chapter 26. How does hatred become love? The answer is forgiveness. What does it mean to forgive? According to Merriam-Webster, forgiveness means to cease to feel resentment against an offender, to pardon or to allow an offense to pass without judgment. A Course in Miracles states that forgiveness recognizes what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. Forgiveness merely sees sin as false and lets it go. Forgiveness is still and quietly does nothing. It merely looks and waits and judges not. So I'm going to tell you a story, and this is my story of forgiveness. The story of Michelle is one of unworthiness from a very early age. My mom was very anxious and quick to anger. From a small child's point of view, I felt responsible for my mother's anxiety and anger. I was always cautious about everything. I was always cautious about everything I did in order to prevent my mother's angry outbursts and rage. I was always in conflict with my mother, waiting to defend myself when she attacked. In order to escape the insanity, I moved out immediately at 18. As an adult, I made sure I lived far enough away so I didn't have to go home. And when I did, there was always conflict. I hated my mother because a mother is supposed to be loving, and she wasn't. When I became a mother, I was determined to not become my mother. Fast forward many years. My husband gets a job in Portland, and we move an hour away from my mother. I knew the move was so I could heal this relationship. My mother has dementia, and my stepfather lovingly takes care of her. Last summer, he started to have heart problems and needed to have a quadruple heart bypass. He would be in the hospital for a while and unable to take care of my mom for a couple months. Someone would need to care for my mother. In that moment, I panicked. I couldn't do it. There's no way I was going to spend the night at my mom's house. My sister might be able to help, but my brother was in the same boat as I was. He couldn't handle my mother. I felt like I would die if I had to spend more than 2 days with my mom. At that moment, I felt so much hatred towards my mother. I felt like I shouldn't have to take care of her. Why should I give up my summer? I hadn't been this upset in a very long time. I was shocked at the intensity of my anger and hatred. I was stunned like a deer in headlights. All I could do was observe. No pushing down, no distractions, no running away. I realized that this feeling was very familiar. It was how I had always felt about myself when I was depressed. I had been protecting this hate. I'd been projecting this hate onto my mother and blaming her for how I was feeling. She was the bad mother, and it was her fault. I didn't want to be like her, and I wanted to separate myself from her. I had built a wall of hatred, anger, and defense to protect myself. This realization poked a hole in the ego's defense. Maybe I'm not seeing things as they really are. I had already seen this in many other areas of my life, but not with a relationship with my mother. Maybe I'm wrong. And in that moment of questioning and curiosity, willingness was born. With willingness, I was able to go to my mom's to care for her for several weeks. The form didn't change. She has dementia. It has made her even more irritable, angry, and mean. She doesn't have a filter and says crazy things like, I wish you would just leave, and I wish you would just shut up. She is very sensitive to all sounds and anything different. I was able to be present and watch the ego mind in myself and my mother. When she would get upset or confused, I saw it as a call for love and gave her a hug, told her I loved her. She would melt. She would look at me with her innocent blue eyes and say she loved me and thank me for being with her. Throughout the summer, we would sit on the deck and watch the birds sing. We would sing our own songs. We would go on long rides in the country to admire the beauty of Oregon. We did countless crosswords together, and she is so good doing crosswords. I cooked, cleaned, and took care of their huge garden. At night, we'd watch her favorite series, Heartland. It was a very peaceful time. Of course, it was not all peaceful in form. When my mom was upset and lashing out, I would remind myself to look for fear, guilt, shame, blame, hate, anger. It wasn't there. It never was. Only in my story, in my thoughts about what it meant. I didn't plan on healing my relationship with my mother. It was grace. It just happened without any doing on my part. It's only in the reflection that I can see how it happened. My practice now is to notice judgment, guilt, shame, or general unworthiness. I ask, is it real? And then I test it. What happens if I do nothing? I just allow it to be, not trying to get rid of it or react to it. Every time I do this, the thoughts disappear into the nothingness that they are. If I don't go visit my mom during the week, I feel a twinge of guilt. I should be helping because they need help. And I ask myself, is this guilt real? The next time I visit, I look for guilt, and I can't find it anywhere. All I see is love. So that's my story. And now I'm going to relate it back to NTI and what Sharon read for us. So in Luke 16, I just took an excerpt and it talks about the story, and it was the story of Lazarus. but that doesn't even make any difference what story it is. So it says, as the story plays itself out, it seemed to become more confusing and complicated, and one forgets that the story is only thought within the mind, pure illusion without reality of any kind. And one makes judgments, the story becomes more meaningful, and it seems to take on life. And this has been my life for 60 years. I'm going to be 60 in January. And from a small child, this anger and hatred has taken its own life, and I've continually played it out again and again and again. I made judgments about the story. She shouldn't be that way. She's my mother. She should be loving. She should be caring. Well, how do I know? How do I know that that's what I needed? I wouldn't be here now if I'd received all that love. I couldn't realize that it was in me, and I really couldn't receive it from her. So we all have stories in our lives, and these stories continue, and we reapply meaning when similar thoughts come together in the mind. So every time I was with my mom, I reapplied meaning to all her behavior. And yet the story was never anything but thought, without power to affect apart from the mind of the thinker. So I was thinking these thoughts all along, and yeah, it was affecting me, and I was reinforcing them and reinforcing them. So everything I experienced through the filter of my mind. I was never focused on the world or my mother. I was always focused on the thought that my mom was a bad mom. The basis of all my experience until now has been the belief in the law of separateness. I needed to have her separate from me. I didn't want to be one with her. I didn't want to be like her. So I came up with experiences that supported that. The Spirit of God is one, and everything that exists within the Spirit of God, and the truth is always true. And so it asks, what does a story mean except that it can have no meaning? And if that is true of this story, can that which you experience with any meaning apart from the meaning that you give it? So all stories in our lives are just the meaning that we give it. So how does this happen? Judgment. Judgment makes thought seem real and gives meaning to the thought. So I judged that my thoughts were real. I judged my mother. I judged myself. I made it real. And in this judgment, it made me separate. And that was my goal, was I needed to be separate. But based on God's law, the Spirit of God is one. There's no separate one that can offend or hurt you. There's only a collection of thoughts that which you hold within your mind. Of themselves, the thoughts have no meaning. But based on past learning and learned through judgment, the thoughts seem to have meaning, and so you feel offended or hurt based on what you think you know. So I thought I knew what my mother was all about. I thought I knew that she was a bad mother. I thought that I hated her. But this was just a story that I had invented in my mind. And I experienced that story. And so now, can you see how your brother has done nothing? Can you see how all the meaning that seemed to result in hurt has come from the filter of your mind? I just allowed all the hurt throughout the years was just a story in my mind that I just kept believing and reinforcing. Because you believe that the meaning applied is real, and yet this does not mean that meaning is real or meaningful in any way. It only means that you believe it is. And so you react as if it is. And in this way, you continue to learn the meaning that you apply to your thoughts. So it's this loop. I give meaning to my thoughts by believing them. And then I react. And then, so every time I go to my mom's, it was good for a little bit and we were okay. And then all of a sudden, she'd be angry and then something would happen. And then it was like, oh, there she is again. She's doing it again. She's the bad mom. She's, for me. And then I would defend myself. And then there'd be a big fight. And then I'd leave in anger and say I'd never come back again. And this repeated over and over and over. So, forgiveness is acknowledging you do not want to hurt anymore. You acknowledge that the meaning that has hurt you is within your mind. You are the owner or believer in that meaning. And so you are also the one that can let go of any meaning that you have applied. So this is mine. I can keep it going, or I can let it go. So I have taught myself that thoughts have great meaning, that all these thoughts from my mother are true. But these thoughts have purpose. And the purpose is to define and make sense of your world and to define and protect you. This is the hidden meaning you have given them. And this is why you must lay thoughts aside. So I used these thoughts to protect me from my mother. And not only to protect me, but it kept me from seeing any love that was there ever. It was there, but I chose to focus on making her bad. So, and then it says, and this will seem to take great faith at all times. But faith is nothing more than an expression of willingness. So that day in my kitchen, the pain, the anger that I thought I hadn't seen in years came back. I had never had a situation with my mother that I thought that caused that brought that up. I avoided being in that situation. I made sure that I wasn't in that situation. And it all came flooding through. And I saw that this is how I've been feeling about myself my whole life. It has nothing to do with my mother. It's just something that I believed about myself my whole life. She was just the person that I projected it onto. And I know we do, a lot of people, our mothers get a lot of the blame because they're the ones that are there. So it will take great faith and willingness. And call on your willingness and remember it is your strength. And with that willingness, I was able to go and not knowing what was going to happen and just be willing to observe and watch and see. So how did I do that? In the stillness of the mind. The mind wants to say, oh, she's doing it again. This means you're bad. This means you did something wrong, and I'm to blame. And so then all the defenses come running out. So in Revelation 16, it says, it's time to be quiet and still the mind. Within the stillness, there's a rustling, but what you hear and feel is the rustling of illusion. So in the back of my mind, when something's going on, it's telling me a story. It's rustling, saying, hey, this is happening again. You need to get out of here. You can't be here. She's a bad mom. It's all your fault that she's angry, so you better leave. Still the mind in faith that the rustling is illusion. It's all the thoughts that I've reinforced for 60 years. Let the rustling rustle, but hold only to the thoughts of stillness. Be still, and in this way you do not acknowledge illusion. In this way you do not acknowledge it. It is as true. In this way you do nothing, and nothing is the acknowledgement that nothing is due. So, in the reaction, the believing, that's the doing. I do nothing by not reacting. I do nothing by not believing. And how this happened in my mind is being curious and just watching to see, is it my thoughts? Is this true? And questioning, is it real that I'm guilty? Is it real that I'm unworthy? Is it real that she's a bad mother? Yeah, she's done some things that maybe a mother shouldn't do. But how am I to know? I know that her childhood was full of suffering, and she's only acting from her pain. So my mantra was, I need do nothing. And in that, doing nothing meant, to me in my mind, I don't need to think about it. I don't need to react. I don't need to do anything. And in that, the peace and the stillness came. Let peace rule the mind as all that is not true moves on through. So not by not doing anything, not giving it my attention, it just moves through. God is love. In silence, let this love be known. Heaven is all that is, and all that is realized through the passing of what is not. Allowing all the pain and all the believing just to pass on through. And what was left was just peace, silence, and then this beautiful love. Nothing is happening in the mind when anything but love is perceived. So unless love is there, which is just this openness, allowing, nothing's happening. It's just our mind doing its thing with thoughts that aren't real. Be willing to loosen the hold on nothing by trusting the stillness which nothing is not. Trust within the stillness. Your true peace is known here. Trust within the stillness until the images of the mind have been transformed. So throughout the summer, I noticed the stillness. I noticed it in the garden. I noticed it in the birds. I noticed everywhere. I noticed in the eyes of my mom. It was there. So that's my story. It's a long one. At this time, I guess we will play another song. And that song is, I Can See Clearly Now. Hey, now it's time for share. If anybody wants to share anything, I'd love it. Love to hear it. Marisol?
That was so beautiful, Michelle. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I was deeply moved by that one thing that you said, that you saw the stillness in your mom's eyes. And I'm like, if that's not forgiveness, I don't know what is. It's absolutely gorgeous. I was just very moved by what you shared. So thank you so much.
Rhoda?
First of all, I am so happy to see you. The entire time that you were speaking, I kept hearing Byron Katie. There are no new thoughts in the world. And I am continually amazed at how the reflecting happens. And there's this idea that somehow this thought is special, this story is special. Yeah, no one else is going through this. And then you hear another and another and another and another exactly the same. Literally nothing in form is different about the story or the thought of the story or anything about it. And your ability to demonstrate all the ways that we project, all the ways that we think it's happening outside of us, all the ways that we believe the experience is true, just was really, really clear. And yeah, if I can do nothing, and if I could do nothing, all I need to do is doing nothing is not believing and not reacting, and just keep watching. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
I knew I needed to share it. And this was really good to really, because when it's all happening, you're kind of noticing, but you're not, it was good to reflect and put it in writing. So I was really grateful for this opportunity. Well, if they're out, Tawanda?
Hello, my dear friend. We've spent countless hours talking about our mothers and how their behavior, we thought it was affecting us. And I'm not sure if I can get through this. But I had those same experiences you spoke about were the same ones that affected me. And, my mom got sick. And we had to put her in a rehab center. And she got sicker. Then we put her in a nursing home. And, all she wanted to do was to go home. And a week before she died, I decided I was going to take her home. And she said, well, who's going to take care of me? And I said, I am. I'm going to take care of you. And she never answered me because she knew, I knew she knew that I had forgiven her for our relationship. I had forgiven her. And but she never said anything. And then a week later, she got sick. We took her to the hospital. She never went home. We took her to the hospital and she died. And she died with me looking her right in her eyes, and that stillness came in, and all I could see was peace on her face. And the thing that was so strange was there was this man in the next room, and his whole room was white. He was white, his hair was white, and everything in this room was such unbelievable. It was like, and he was just laying in his bed, just crying. He was just sobbing. And he was looking at me as if to tell me, everything's okay. Everything's okay. Your mom is fine. And, you know, I felt that peace, and I was just happy that she wasn't suffering anymore, and that she could transition on knowing that I loved her, even though, you know, I still have a lot of memories of how she treated me, but I still loved her, and if everyone could just practice that forgiveness, because it's in us. And if we could just know what it's truly like to forgive someone and not judge someone, life would be so much better. It would be so much better. So, thank you for listening.
I love you, Tawanda. Thank you for sharing. John?
We can, at least I can. I don't think I'm unique here. Feel the healing as evidenced by a really wet face as tears roll down. And to get glimpses of the love that is present, even when we think it's living in a world, in this case, a family, a mother that appeared to be going through her own stuff, and it appeared to be her stuff. And then fast forward to 20, 30 years, and you realize that she's reflecting your stuff. It's not really yours, but it's the stuff you believe in. And to have the opportunity to just say, wow, thank you. I hated you at the time for it, but I love your lesson. And, the love that it takes to give that lesson is it's beautiful when you get the opportunity to see it. And I forget often. And see her for the, the metaphorical ruler across the knuckles, so to speak. But it's here, it's what we've asked for. Help me to see this differently. And I really appreciated your, Michelle, your homily today. It was touched my heart. And thank you for this opportunity this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to share. I see Sharon has her hand up.
I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be your reader and to actually have a homily that I could have done, because my toughest relationship was my mother. It's a story that I see, and we always, it's what Rhoda shared, we always think that we have the worst stories. And yet you find when you get into spiritual groups that the story's quite common, Now, for me, it was a trauma bond. My mom was pregnant with me when she had polio. So, and then she became abusive, not because she wanted to, but these were all my feelings about me. My birth was very, was a volatile birth. And my story unfolded with a lot of special hate and special love. That's how it was. But you just spoke so beautifully today. And I just loved everything you said. And thank you all. Thank you, Michelle. Beautiful.
Thank you for being my friend.
You're just a beautiful, beautiful soul.
So are you. Okay, Jacqueline.
Okay, good morning. Michelle, I'm so moved. It was such a beautiful homily. And it's just amazing how these truth teachings, these beautiful passages that came through Regina, how they come to life in the telling of the actual direct experience. I mean, you had that experience. And then as you shared that with us, we just saw those words blossom. Now we can go back to those words. We can apply this in our own lives, and you just make this possible. You make it obvious that these aren't just concepts. It was a wonderful, wonderful teaching, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to come in and do this. It was very beneficial to share and go through and reflect on it. Okay, George, you want to play the last song? This last song is one of the songs that my mom and I sang together this summer, so I figured it was an appropriate one to play. And the song is Everything's Beautiful.
Been watching our online gathering. It happens weekly on Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. To join us live in the sanctuary, visit our website, awakening-together.org. You'll want to click on Online Sanctuary in the main menu, and then in the drop-down menu, look for How to Enter the Sanctuary. Right there at the top of the page is a clickable link. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary and join with you in fellowship. Thank you again for watching. Also, please know that if you'd like to stay connected via the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube, you can subscribe and hit the bell for more notifications. We hope to see you in the sanctuary.